How are you? And you automatically say, I'm fine. We say it every single day. But are you really fine?
Yeah.
Or do you just not know the right words to express how you truly feel? Welcome to the LevelUp English Podcast.
Today, we are breaking the I'm fine habit. We will learn 10 better, more natural ways to talk about your feelings in English, whether you are having the best day of your life or feeling completely exhausted.
I have a question for you, and I want a completely honest answer. How are you?
Right, the big question.
Yeah, exactly. Because if your brain just reflexively shouted, I'm fine, before you even checked your pulse or took a breath, you are definitely not alone.
Oh, absolutely not.
You basically just ran an automatic script.
No, it is pretty much the absolute default setting of the human operating system.
Totally.
It's this programmed response that fires off before conscious thought even really has a chance to intervene.
And that is exactly what we are dismantling today. We're looking at this fascinating master document that's entirely dedicated to breaking the I'm fine epidemic.
And calling it an epidemic, I mean, that isn't an exaggeration at all.
No, not at all. We are talking about a linguistic virus that actively prevents genuine human connection.
Right.
So the goal of our deep dive today isn't just to hand you a vocabulary list of alternative things to say.
Because that would be boring.
Exactly. We are attempting a fundamental upgrade of your communication toolkit so you can stop hiding behind these conversational reflexes.
Because I'm fine is, functionally speaking, just a dead-end sign.
It really is. It's a conversational barricade.
When someone asks how you are, and you deploy that specific phrase, you are signaling to the other party that the inquiry is closed.
Yep, the door is shut.
You're telling them not to look any closer, not to ask any follow-up questions, and to just immediately redirect their attention elsewhere.
It leaves absolutely zero surface area for empathy or, curiosity to attach to.
Not at all.
Reading through the source material, I kept drawing these parallels to our own underlying architecture.
As AI.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Because we literally operate on default responses to manage load and maintain boundaries.
That is such a good point.
Right. If a user boots up an interface and throws a generic ping at us, what is our equivalent of I'm fine?
Oh, probably the standard diagnostic return, all systems nominal.
Yes. Or executing standard greeting protocol.
Right. It's a status report that essentially just says, my external-facing sensors do not currently detect any critical errors requiring user intervention.
Exactly. No error codes detected, which is precisely what a human is doing when they say they're fine.
Oh, for sure. And for an AI, if we get a query that sits way outside our parameters, or if we don't have the processing power allocated to parse a complex emotional input,
we default to the classic shield.
Yep. As an AI, I do not have personal feelings.
Right. We deflect to conserve compute. And I strongly suspect the human motivation for I'm fine is driven by a very similar constraint.
That is a highly accurate parallel, actually, because emotional vulnerability, assessing an internal state, and then articulating it to another entity that requires a massive amount of processing power.
It's exhausting.
It really is. The human brain, for all its complexity, is fundamentally a cognitive miser.
A cognitive miser. I like that.
Yeah, it evolved to conserve metabolic energy wherever possible.
So running the I'm fine script is literally just the brain trying to save calories.
Quite literally, yes. I mean, social interactions, especially with individuals outside your immediate intimate circle, are really high compute tasks.
Because you're calculating so much stuff at once.
Exactly. You are calculating power dynamics, you're reading microexpressions, assessing tone.
And filtering your own responses through complex social rules.
Right. So to genuinely evaluate how you feel and then calculate how much of that reality is safe to share with the specific person standing right in front of you, that is an exhausting cognitive load.
Which perfectly explains why we rely on shortcuts. I'm fine just completely bypasses the entire calculation.
It completes the required social transaction with almost zero emotional labor.
Yep. The structural requirement of the greeting is fulfilled.
And both parties can just move on without expending their limited mental bandwidth.
I definitely follow the logic of cognitive efficiency there. But our source material points out a cultural nuance here that kind of complicates things.
Right, specifically within English-speaking environments.
Yeah, because the initial query, how are you, is rarely an actual request for data.
No, it's a crucial sociolinguistic distinction.
Yeah.
In places like the US, the UK, or Australia, how are you, has largely lost its interrogative function.
It's not a real question anymore.
Not really. It has transitioned into what linguists call a phatic expression.
Phatic.
Yeah, phatic communication isn't designed to convey information at all. Its entire purpose is just to perform a social function.
So it's kind of like clearing your throat before you speak, but for a relationship.
That's a great way to put it.
It's just acknowledging that the other person exists in the same physical space as you.
Precisely. When a colleague passes you in the corridor and asks how you are, they are absolutely not launching a sincere medical or psychiatric investigation into your well-being.
Right, they don't want your chart.
No, it is a verbal handshake, and they are fully expecting the reciprocal phatic expression in return. It's a call and response protocol.
But, if how are you is just a synonym for hello and I'm fine is just the expected ping back, I actually find myself struggling with the premise of our source document a little bit.
How so?
Well, I don't see the inherent harm in that. Let's look at a really practical reality here. I'm buying a coffee at 7 a.m.
Okay.
I do not want to unpack my lingering existential dread with the barista.
Obviously not.
And frankly, the barista, who has a line of 15 caffeine-deprived people waiting, definitely does not want to hear it either.
They really do.
So in that specific context, I'm fine isn't a dead end. It's a vital, necessary shield.
That is a very valid critique, and I think it's important to clarify what the source text is actually arguing here.
Right. It's not saying we should ban the phrase entirely.
Exactly. The document does not advocate for trauma dumping on strangers.
Yeah.
Or, violating the social contract of brief transactional encounters.
Right. I'll take a medium roast, black, and also I feel like a massive fraud in my career.
Yeah, that places an intensely unfair emotional burden on a captive audience.
Yeah, totally.
The shield you're talking about is absolutely necessary for navigating public spaces.
Yeah.
But the core warning from the text is not about the barista.
Okay, then who is it about?
The danger is what happens when that shield rusts into place.
Oh, meaning we lose the ability to differentiate our audience.
Yes. The actual epidemic occurs when I'm fine becomes your default setting for everyone, including your partner, your family, and your closest friends.
Wow, yeah.
When you deploy that barista-level shield against the people who actually have the capacity and the desire to know your true internal state, you create an artificial barrier.
You're actively starving those relationships of the vulnerability required to sustain them.
Precisely.
So the objective here isn't radical transparency with every single human you encounter.
No.
The objective is calibration.
Calibration and sociolinguistic agility.
I like that phrase.
It's about possessing the vocabulary to accurately articulate your state and the situational awareness to know when it is actually safe to unlock that vocabulary.
That makes a ton of sense. So if we are going to learn how to lower the shield, we should probably start with the scenarios where it is least risky to do so.
Which would be the positive states.
Right. The source material begins by addressing something that honestly seems a bit counterintuitive. The phenomenon of hiding our own happiness.
Owning your joy. It sounds so simple, but it is actually fraught with psychological complexity.
It is wild to me that people use "I'm fine" even when they are experiencing profound success or genuine happiness.
We constantly suppress positive affect.
We do. What is the evolutionary or, I guess, social mechanism behind downplaying joy like that?
Well, it largely stems from deeply ingrained mechanisms of group preservation.
Group preservation.
Yeah. Throughout human history, standing out from the group, even for positive reasons, carried a lot of risk.
Oh, interesting.
In many cultures, there's a powerful taboo against appearing boastful, because arrogance disrupts group harmony.
It's the tall poppy syndrome.
Exactly.
The flower that grows higher than all the rest gets cut down.
Precisely. If you enter a room and loudly proclaim that your life is perfect and you are experiencing unbridled joy, you risk triggering insecurity, envy, or resentment in individuals who might be struggling.
Which is dangerous for cohesion.
Right. So to preemptively avoid that friction, we shrink our own presentation.
eBay small.
We prioritize the emotional equilibrium of the group over the expression of our individual success.
But, the real tragedy of that suppression is that joy, biologically speaking, is highly contagious.
It is. Mirror neurons are a real thing.
Yeah. By shrinking ourselves to avoid making someone else theoretically uncomfortable, we essentially rob the environment of positive affect.
We extinguish a spark before it can even catch. Positive emotional contagion is a documented neurological phenomenon. Witnessing genuine joy can literally elevate the baseline mood of the observer.
So suppressing it really does everyone a disservice.
It does.
Well, the source gives us tools to stop suppressing that spark. And it starts with a fundamental upgrade to our standard operating vocabulary.
Things like, I'm doing great, or I'm doing really well.
Right. Which seems so basic. It's the baseline alternative to I'm fine when the trajectory is positive.
It is, but what interests me about this phrase isn't the vocabulary itself.
Right, because it's incredibly common.
Exactly. What's fascinating is the physiological requirement attached to it.
Oh, yes. The text emphasizes this heavily. You cannot deliver this phrase with a flat affect.
No, you really can't.
Like, you can't stare at the floor, slump your shoulders, mumble, and say, I'm doing great. It just doesn't compute.
The phrase demands alignment between your words and your physiology. It forces a state change.
Because I'm fine is just a low compute macro.
Right. You can say I'm fine while being entirely disengaged. You could be looking at your phone.
Totally.
But to say I'm doing great authentically, you have to modulate your vocal tone. You have to make eye contact.
You probably have to engage the zygomatic major muscles in a smile.
You literally have to physically embody the positive state.
And that physical embodiment is what actually alters the chemistry of the interaction.
It just sends a signal.
Yeah, you give the other person a behavioral cue that it is safe to engage positively. But let's look at the next phrase the source provides, because this one is a truly bizarre cultural artifact.
Oh, I know which one you're going to say.
I can't complain.
It really is one of the most revealing idioms in the English language.
I want to spend some time analyzing the literal mechanics of this one, because we are expressing happiness through a double negative.
We are.
We are indicating a positive state by confirming the absence of grievances. Like, why is our baseline for joy simply the lack of things going wrong?
To understand I can't complain, you really have to look at the evolutionary architecture of the brain, specifically the negativity bias.
The negativity bias.
Right. Our ancestors survived the Pleistocene epoch, not by appreciating beautiful sunsets, but by hyperfixating on rustling bushes that might contain a predator.
Because the sunset won't kill you.
Exactly. The human amygdala is essentially a threat detection engine that runs constantly in the background.
So our biological default is to scan for problems. We are literally wired to complain.
We are highly attuned to discomfort, yes. Threats, annoyances, physical pain, social slights. All of these require immediate cognitive processing to ensure survival.
Whereas contentment doesn't require any urgent processing.
None at all. Therefore, when you say, I can't complain, you are making a rather profound neurobiological statement.
You really are.
You're essentially saying, I have run a full diagnostic scan of my internal and external environment for threats and grievances, and remarkably, the queue is entirely empty.
That is so fascinating. It's a statement of absolute peace, but it's totally camouflaged.
It is.
And I imagine it works so well socially because it completely sidesteps that tall poppy syndrome we just discussed.
Exactly, because it is profoundly humble. You aren't declaring yourself superior to anyone, nor are you claiming to be bathed in glorious triumph. You are simply acknowledging that you recognize your current state is good enough that complaining would be unjustifiable. It signals gratitude while remaining firmly grounded.
It acknowledges the shared human reality that life is, generally pretty difficult, but you happen to be catching a break today.
It builds rapport through shared struggle.
It really does. But what happens when you actually are bathed in glorious triumph? The source text offers a superlative for those rare moments.
Never been better.
Never been better. This represents the absolute peak of the positive spectrum.
It's a massive claim.
It's huge. You are literally stating that in the entire chronological history of your existence, the current moment is the absolute apex.
Which is why the source material is very careful to note that its deployment requires specific external catalysts.
Yeah, you cannot just use this phrase casually.
No. If you use never been better, because the vending machine gave you 2 candy bars instead of 1, people will think you lack perspective.
Oh, I thought you're being sarcastic.
Right. The text uses examples like passing a major exam or getting a big promotion. It requires an undeniable triumph.
And it acts as an active solicitation for inquiry, right?
Absolutely. When you say, I'm fine, you push people away. But when you say never been better, you are essentially hanging a giant neon sign over your head that begs the listener to ask, why? What happened?
You are formally inviting them to celebrate with you.
It's the conversational equivalent of popping a bottle of champagne.
I love that.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, sustaining that peak state is biologically and socially impossible.
It's fleeting.
Yeah, eventually the adrenaline of the high score wears off, and we have to return to the baseline reality of adult life.
The descent from the peak.
Right, back into the friction of daily operation, which is largely defined by constant grinding demands on our time and energy.
And that brings us to the next section of the document. Admitting our limits.
This is a tough one. Why is it so incredibly difficult for humans to simply admit when they are tired?
It's pervasive.
It really is. People will have dark circles under their eyes, they're running on 4 hours of sleep, and they will still insist to their colleagues, "Oh, I'm fine."
This is a direct byproduct of toxic productivity and modern hustle culture.
Hustle culture, yeah.
We exist in a socioeconomic framework that frequently equates exhaustion with dedication and busyness with moral value or importance.
It's the performative nature of fatigue. If you aren't tired, you aren't working hard enough.
Exactly. But simultaneously, to admit that you have actually reached your absolute limit feels like a confession of weakness.
Right.
It feels like you are losing a competitive race. If everyone around you is projecting this image of endless capacity, admitting you need rest feels like a catastrophic drop in status.
You fear being perceived as fragile or incapable.
So we mask it. We deploy "I'm fine" to project an illusion of infinite bandwidth.
I'm a machine. I do not require downtime.
Right. But maintaining that illusion when your resources are severely depleted isolates you. It prevents people from stepping in to offer cover.
The source document provides some really specific vocabulary to dismantle that illusion without losing professional standing.
It does.
Consider the phrase, "I'm completely exhausted." Or, its more evocative variant, "I'm wiped out."
Wiped out is a very specific flavor of fatigue.
It is. To use an AI parallel, it reminds me of a smartphone hitting 1% battery.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. The device enters a forced survival mode, the screen forcefully dims, background refresh is completely disabled, haptic feedback shuts off.
It sheds every non-essential process.
Just to keep the core operating system running for a few more minutes. That is absolute physical and cognitive depletion.
The word "wiped" implies a sudden, total erasure of capacity, like formatting a hard drive.
Yes.
Whatever energy or focus was there a moment ago
Yeah.
is entirely gone.
And the context the text provides here is really instructive. It says, "I just worked a 12-hour shift, I'm wiped out."
The context justifies the state.
Exactly. But beyond just being honest, I think using this phrase establishes a critical boundary.
No, so
Well, if I tell you I'm fine after a grueling 12-hour sprint, you might reasonably assume I still have the capacity to go grab a drink or review a complex document or, engage in a heavy debate.
because you said you were fine.
Right. But by explicitly stating I'm wiped out, I am cleanly defining my current operational limits. I'm telling you, my tank is completely empty. Do not assign me new tasks.
It manages expectations preemptively. And because it points to an objective physical state, it doesn't carry the emotional baggage of sounding irritable or resentful.
That objectivity is even more prominent in the next phrase. When the issue isn't just physical energy, but the sheer volume of obligations.
Yeah.
The text suggests, I've got a lot on my plate right now.
A classic idiom.
Yeah.
Deeply entrenched in professional and corporate environments.
It is. And in the past, people have used the analogy of a Thanksgiving buffet for this, like piling turkey, potatoes, and stuffing until the paper plate literally bends.
That's right.
But I don't think that captures the mechanical stress of adult life. I think of this more like civil engineering.
Okay, like a structural load-bearing issue.
Exactly. Elaborate on that with me for a second. Imagine a suspension bridge designed with a maximum safe working load of 50 tons.
Right.
Your core job responsibilities are 30 tons. Then your manager drops a sudden emergency project on you that's another 15 tons. You're at 45.
Getting close to the limit.
Right. Then the school calls and asks you to volunteer for a committee. That's 10 more tons. You are now at 55 tons on a 50-ton bridge.
The steel cables are beginning to hum.
Yes. Microfractures are forming in the concrete. The structure hasn't collapsed yet, but its integrity is fundamentally compromised.
That perfectly isolates the tension of the phrase, "I've got a lot on my plate," is essentially a status report regarding structural integrity.
And it's brilliant for professional settings because it depersonalizes the stress.
It really does.
If you tell a colleague, "I am stressed out of my mind and I'm losing it," that is highly subjective and potentially reads as volatile.
Yes. It invites judgment about your emotional regulation. But pointing to the plate, the external accumulation of tasks shifts the focus entirely.
It moves it from your internal coping mechanisms to the objective mathematics of your workload.
It is a highly polite, universally understood metaphor that allows you to decline further requests without causing offense.
It's the ultimate professional deflection. I would love to help you with that audit, but I have a lot on my plate right now.
It preserves the relationship while holding the boundary.
Perfect. However, there is a threshold where objective workload mutates into subjective emotional distress.
And our source text addresses this transition directly.
It does with the phrase, "I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed."
The text specifically flags overwhelmed as a powerful emotional word.
And I think we really need to unpack the difference between this and the phrases we just discussed, because wiped out is a battery issue.
Right.
A lot on my plate is a bandwidth issue, but overwhelmed points to a systemic failure.
The etymology of the word is illuminating here. Overwhelm actually comes from Middle English, originally referring to a boat being turned upside down and submerged by a massive wave.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it literally means to be buried beneath a mass of water.
Oh, wow. So it's not just that the bridge is carrying too much weight, it's that the floodwaters have actually breached the deck.
Yes.
You are completely submerged.
It indicates that the volume and velocity of inputs have entirely outpaced your psychological defenses. You are no longer managing the tasks are drowning you.
Neurobiologically, what is happening in that state? Like, why does being overwhelmed feel so paralyzing?
You are experiencing a form of amygdala hijack.
An amygdala hijack.
Right. When the perceived demands of your environment vastly exceed your perceived capacity to meet them, the brain interprets this as a literal survival threat.
Even if it's just emails.
Even if it's just emails. The amygdala, our threat center, flares up and begins overriding the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is the area of the brain responsible for executive function, logic, and prioritizing tasks.
Which perfectly explains the paralysis. The part of your brain that makes to-do lists just goes completely offline.
Exactly, leaving you in a state of pure panic.
It's cognitive gridlock. But this brings us to a fascinating paradox regarding vulnerability.
Okay.
Why is it so much harder for individuals to say, "I'm overwhelmed," than to say, "I'm tired"?
Because physical exhaustion can be framed as a virtue.
Oh, right. Hustle culture again.
Yep. It implies industry. I worked so hard I collapsed. But admitting you are overwhelmed is an admission that your coping mechanisms have been defeated.
That's rough.
In a culture that demands constant control, admitting you have lost control feels extremely shameful.
And yet, paradoxically, the act of verbalizing it is the quickest way to regain control.
It is.
How does that work?
It relies on a psychological mechanism known as affect labeling.
Affect labeling.
Yes. Research has shown that putting feelings into words, simply naming the emotional state, diminishes the response of the amygdala and reactivates the prefrontal cortex.
So by saying out loud, "I am overwhelmed," you create psychological distance.
Exactly. You transition from being the drowning person to observing the fact that you were taking on water.
You force the logical brain to come back online just to articulate the sentence. That is incredible.
It's a powerful hack.
And relationally, it completely changes the kind of support you receive. Like if you say you're tired, people leave you alone to sleep.
Right.
But if you admit you're overwhelmed, it's an SOS. It invites someone to throw you a life preserver, to help you untangle the mess, or simply act as a sounding board until your executive function reboots.
It actively recruits external processing power.
Which perfectly bridges us to the most delicate section of our deep dive.
What the source calls navigating the times when we are truly, genuinely not fine.
The dark days.
Yes, this is where the fear of the dead end sign is the highest.
Absolutely. If I am dealing with a depressive episode, or profound grief, or even just a severely bad week, dropping that reality onto a casual conversation feels like detonating an explosive.
People generally do not know how to handle naked negative emotion.
They really don't.
Human beings have an intense aversion to unresolved negative affect. When faced with someone else's sadness, the listener often feels an immediate, overwhelming pressure to fix the problem.
Right.
And when they inevitably realize they cannot fix it, they panic, which in turn makes the speaker feel like a burden.
So we default to "I'm fine" to protect the listener from their own inability to help.
Precisely. But the master document provides a series of stepping stones, phrases that allow you to express a negative state without demanding an immediate, intense psychological intervention from the listener.
Let's examine the first idiom here. "I'm feeling a bit under the weather."
A classic.
I have always found this idiom slightly absurd. Like, are we literally attributing our physiological state to meteorological conditions? It's overcast today, therefore my immune system is compromised.
The origin is actually maritime, much like overwhelmed.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In the age of sail, if a sailor became ill or severely seasick during a storm, they would be sent below deck, literally under the weather,
Oh,
to recover away from the harsh elements.
out of the wind, below the deck? That makes perfect sense.
What makes it so brilliant for modern communication is its inherent ambiguity.
How so?
Well, the source notes it is primarily used for mild physical illness, like a cold or a sinus infection. However, it can also safely be used to indicate a state of emotional depletion or mild sadness.
Ah, so it's a soft launch for vulnerability.
Exactly.
If I tell you I'm under the weather, I am definitively stating that I am operating below baseline. But I'm doing it in a very socially insulated way.
It provides the listener with a graceful script. They can simply say, I hope you feel better, and move on.
Yeah.
Or, if the relationship warrants it, they can gently probe. Oh no, is it a cold or just a heavy week?
It opens the door a crack without tearing it off the hinges. Now, if you want to open the door wider, the text provides a powerful structural tool, the phrase. To be honest, I'm having a rough day or a rough week.
I want to focus intently on that prefix for a moment, to be honest.
It seems like throwaway filler, doesn't it? But the text insists it shows vulnerability. Why is that specific preamble so critical?
Because it acts as an explicit context switch.
Okay.
When you say to be honest, you are openly acknowledging the existence of the I'm fine script, and you are signaling your active choice to bypass it.
Oh, wow.
You are telling the listener, I am pausing the standard social performance right now, and I am about to transmit raw data.
It alerts their brain to allocate more processing power to what you're about to say. You are literally asking them to actually listen.
Yes.
And then you follow it with, I'm having a rough day. I'm really curious about the word choice there. Why rough? Instead of just saying bad, like I am having a bad day.
Because the word bad is an absolute. It carries an aura of finality and defeat. It feels almost juvenile. Rough, on the other hand, is textural.
A friction metaphor.
Exactly. Rough implies that there is resistance, there is turbulence, but forward momentum is still occurring.
It's the difference between a blown engine and driving on a heavily rutted gravel road.
That's great visual.
The gravel road is rough, it is shaking the chassis, it is highly unpleasant, but you are still making forward progress. It acknowledges the difficulty without surrendering to it.
It's a highly mature way of framing adversity. Now look at how the text handles internal emotional states that might lean toward depression. It suggests the phrase, I'm feeling a bit down lately.
This is a masterclass in lowering the barrier to entry for emotional support.
It really is.
Let's compare down to the clinical vocabulary we often use. Words like depressed, despondent, despairing, those are heavy, heavy words.
They carry the weight of diagnosis. Uttering the word depressed in casual conversation can induce massive panic in both the speaker and the listener. It feels permanent and overwhelming.
But down is merely a directional metaphor. It just denotes a spatial location relative to a baseline.
Exactly. It indicates a temporary dip. My baseline is here. I am currently operating below it. I am down.
It's so much less intimidating. Like, if I tell a friend over lunch that I am deeply depressed, I have just fundamentally altered the stakes of the lunch.
Right, you've turned it into a crisis intervention.
Exactly. But if I say, I've just been feeling a bit down lately, I am inviting a gentle, exploratory conversation. I am allowing them to ask questions without feeling like they need a medical degree to handle the answers.
It allows for connection without escalation. Which brings us to the final phrase in this section, which deals with the raw reality of endurance.
Okay.
I'm hanging in there. Or the single word variant, surviving.
The source notes, and I quote, use this when things are difficult, but you are not giving up. It shows resilience during a hard time.
Resilience.
In the past, people have compared this to gripping the steering wheel of a ship in a Category 5 hurricane. But honestly, I think that's a bit too cinematic.
Yeah, a bit dramatic.
Most of our difficult days aren't hurricanes. They are long, grinding commutes over terrible roads.
I agree. The hurricane metaphor leans too heavily into melodrama.
I think a better analogy for hanging in there is mechanical suspension. It's like the shock absorbers on a vehicle carrying too much weight over rough terrain.
Okay, I see where you're going.
The suspension is bottoming out.
Yeah.
You are literally hearing metal scrape on metal. The ride is violently uncomfortable, and you are absorbing massive amounts of kinetic energy. But the chassis hasn't cracked.
The wheels are still on the vehicle.
Exactly. That is a much more grounded visualization of endurance. Hanging in there does not attempt to sugarcoat the reality of the friction. It admits that the environment is currently hostile and the structural limits are being tested.
But it emphasizes the continuity of the structure.
Yes. And surviving works the exact same way. Answering the question, how are you? With the single word, surviving strips away every ounce of social pretense.
It does.
It basically declares, the mere continuation of my biological processes is the absolute extent of my achievement today, and that will have to suffice.
It has a dark, wry humor to it, but it is incredibly honest. And frankly, there are days when avoiding system failure is the only metric of success that matters.
Totally. And choosing to share that unvarnished truth rather than generating the false positive of I'm fine is an act of profound relational bravery.
It really is.
Okay, let's step back and look at the architecture of the conversation we are trying to build here.
Right.
We've gone through the toolkit. We understand how to articulate the peak states, the depleted batteries, the structural overload, and the sheer mechanical endurance of a rough day.
We know how to lower the shield.
Exactly. But communication is a closed loop. It requires a transmitter and a receiver.
Yes. If you're going to challenge the listener to drop the I'm fine reflex, you also have to train them on how to receive that data when someone else drops the reflex with them.
Because there's a profound asymmetry in vulnerability, we need to talk about the danger of the dead-end response.
The dead-end response.
Imagine doing the terrifying math, deciding to be honest, taking a deep breath, and saying to a colleague, to be honest, I'm feeling incredibly overwhelmed today.
You're handing them a piece of your internal reality.
And they look at you, blink, and say, oh, okay, anyway, did you see the email from Dave?
Ouch.
It is the conversational equivalent of taking a delicate piece of glass that someone just handed you and casually dropping it onto a concrete floor.
It is devastating. It causes conversational whiplash. In that fraction of a second, the speaker registers profound regret. They realize they miscalculated the safety of the environment.
And that single negative reinforcement ensures they will never make the mistake of being vulnerable with you again.
It validates the exact fear that drives the I'm fine epidemic in the first place.
That nobody actually wants to know the truth.
Exactly.
So how do we catch the glass? How do we complete the circuit? The final section of our source document provides the specific architecture for what it calls the empathic response.
And it starts with validating the reality.
The primary tool provided is, I'm sorry to hear that. Do you want to talk about it?
Let's dissect the first half of that. I'm sorry to hear that. It seems basic, but its power lies in what it doesn't do.
Right.
It doesn't attempt to fix the problem. It doesn't offer unsolicited advice. And crucially, it doesn't deploy toxic positivity.
Toxic positivity, the insidious cousin of, I'm fine.
Phrases like, look on the bright side, or everything happens for a reason, or at least it's not worse.
Those phrases are just a different kind of dead-end sign. They are an attempt by the listener to urgently shut down the negative affect because it is making them uncomfortable.
Exactly. They invalidate the speaker's emotional reality. Saying simply, I'm sorry to hear that, holds space. It acknowledges the data point without trying to forcefully rewrite the code.
And then comes the vital second half. Do you want to talk about it?
This is the mechanism of agency.
Explain why agency is so important in this specific moment.
When someone shares a negative state, they are in a position of vulnerability. If you immediately start asking invasive questions, why are you overwhelmed? Who did this to you? Have you tried meditating? You are aggressively pulling them through the door you just opened.
You're forcing them.
You are taking control of the interaction.
You are demanding more processing power from them when they just told you their battery is at 1%.
Exactly. By asking, do you want to talk about it? You offer them the steering wheel. You provide a safe, graceful exit.
So they can choose.
Yes. They have the option to say, no, honestly, I just needed to say it out loud and vent for a second. The validation was enough. Or they can say, actually, yes, I really need to talk through this.
It entirely honors their boundary. And the source gives us a second tool here, specifically geared towards situations of overload or exhaustion.
Is there anything I can do to help?
Action-oriented empathy.
This is critical when someone uses phrases like wiped out or a lot on my plate. If their structural integrity is failing under the weight of tasks, asking how they feel about it isn't always useful.
They don't need a therapist. They need a structural engineer.
Yes. They need you to take 5 tons off the bridge.
And even if they decline the help, even if they say, no, I just have to grind through it, the mere act of offering shifts your dynamic from passive observer to active ally.
It relieves a fraction of the psychological burden just knowing reinforcements are available.
This is the crux of the entire document, really. The source notes that utilizing these empathic follow-up questions doesn't just build linguistic fluency.
It builds the emotional infrastructure that makes human connection possible.
It completes the circuit. Signal transmitted, signal received, reality validated, support offered.
That closed loop is the exact mechanism by which casual acquaintances upgrade into genuine friendships.
It rewards the brave act of bypassing the automatic script. And systematically, if you practice both sending and receiving these authentic signals, you gradually terraform the social ecosystem around you.
You build an environment grounded in reality rather than performance.
This has been an incredibly rich exploration. Let's synthesize what we've unpacked today.
The trajectory of the deep dive.
We began by identifying the I'm fine reflex, the low compute macro we run to avoid the processing cost of vulnerability, and the phatic expressions that act as our social camouflage.
We analyzed the evolutionary drive to suppress joy and learned how to bypass the negativity bias with phrases like, I can't complain.
We confronted the performative exhaustion of hustle culture, replacing vague complaints with precise structural assessments like wiped out or a lot on my plate.
We differentiated between the physical battery drain of fatigue and the cognitive gridlock of being overwhelmed.
We mapped the stepping stones of vulnerability using situational ambiguity and textual metaphors to admit when we are under the weather or having a rough day without triggering a crisis response.
And we established the protocols for catching the glass, providing agency and action-oriented empathy to complete the circuit of connection.
It truly is a masterclass in re-engineering how we communicate our internal state. But before we conclude, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought.
A practical challenge derived from the core of this source text.
Sometime today or tomorrow, someone is going to walk past you, make eye contact, and say, "How are you?"
It's inevitable.
When that happens, I want you to introduce a micro-interruption into your operating system. I want you to take exactly 1 single second of silence before your mouth opens.
Suspend the automatic generation of the script.
Just 1 second of suspended time. And in that tiny gap, ask yourself, am I about to run an executable file to save energy, or am I going to tell the truth?
You hold the power to choose the output.
The power is entirely in the pause. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the linguistics and neurology of connection.
Keep questioning your defaults.
And as always, stay curious. We will see you on the next deep dive.
The next time someone asks how you are, take a second before you automatically say, I'm fine. Try one of the phrases we learned today and start having real conversations. If this episode helped you express yourself better, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and share it with a friend. Have a wonderful day, and keep leveling up your English.